and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm.
I'm Ann Northrop.
You're very brave to watch, given all we have to talk about today, because, you know, once again, it was another week of multiple outrages. Really horrible ones. But this was the week that the Trump administration told the Supreme Court that Americans should be allowed to be discriminated against based on our sexual orientations.
That gay people should be allowed to be discriminated against. But out Congressman Mark Takano from California has come out this week for impeaching or starting the impeachment inquiry against Trump.
Yeah. On the Video Music Awards, Taylor Swift pressed her campaign for the Equality Act, and an LGBT musician won for Best Song for the first time.
The hosts of Good Morning America yuck it up over the idea of Prince George, little Prince George, 6 years old in England, taking ballet lessons, and the dance community responded in style and indignation.
David Koch, K-O-C-H, the plutocrat who I would say did more than anyone to destroy U.S. democracy, has died.
Bullies in Indiana videotaped their cowardly beating of a gay student, and a group of young men in California are being investigated for assaulting a trans woman at a motel.
In better news, in France, a soccer game was stopped due to anti-gay chanting from the fans.
Very good. And we want to let our free speech viewers know that Free Speech TV will be in pledge mode again from September 5th through 27th. During that time, this show will premiere Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern and repeat Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern. Sign up for our weekly email to get the details of that straight. So gayusatv.org.
It was more than one outrage a day this week. It was a very difficult
one outrage
week.
An hour.
Right. I mean, look, you had the crack up at the G7, and no one seems to be invoking the 25th Amendment. He backed off on gun control. He uses a lot of language on Israel and his being the chosen one that resonates with his religious right base. He ordered the United States companies to get out of China. He told Jews they're disloyal if they vote for Democrat. He tried to buy Greenland. He wouldn't deal with the Amazon fires. We have a skyrocketing deficit. The question.
And he's ordering government employees to build his wall between here and Mexico and telling them he'll pardon them because they're going to have to build it illegally.
I'm not done. He ended medical deferred action for migrants who have serious health conditions. In other words, you're in the hospital, but you're a migrant. Get the hell out of the country. Get out of the hospital. He's selling hotel space to Attorney General Barr. And he's trying to hold the next G7 next year at his bedbug-ridden resort. The fact that he even responded to that and said, no bed bugs, no bed bugs.
Well, he knows what a poison pill it is.
And his people are targeting journalists. They haven't come after us yet. But it's not just journalists that they're going after. You might want to say this person has a certain prejudice. He's going after their families as well.
I think given the extent to which Trump lies on a daily basis and then accuses the mass media of fake news, that we should start making up stuff about him the way he does.
The thing I most hope is true is what Lawrence O'Donnell said on MSNBC this week, was that his source says that the co-signers on his loans with Deutsche Bank were Russian oligarchs close to Putin.
Trump's loans with Deutsche Bank.
Trump's loans, it's not Lawrence's.
I stepped on your line.
That's all right.
Repeat it.
Yeah, that Lawrence O'Donnell said he has a source close to Deutsche Bank who's seen the loan documents that Trump's had to sign, and he needed co-signers, and they were Russian oligarchs with close ties to Putin. And all you've seen for the last 3 years before he was president is fealty to Putin. And this is what it's about. And if that's not impeachable, people don't want to get upset about that.
Well, we know that he has gone to Russian oligarchs for money for all his deals, and Deutsche Bank. So it would make sense that they would sign off on his Deutsche Bank loans. And this is all about his bankruptcies in Atlantic City and his various shady deals all over the place that he couldn't get money for because he was such a bad businessman. And the only place that would loan him money was Deutsche Bank with Russian co-signers or the Russians themselves.
As Tom Steyer constantly points out.
Well, there's nothing illegal about it, I don't think, but he knows it looks bad.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
So terrible that, even before that, the out gay Representative Mark Takano, from a House member from California, finally came out for impeachment. Now, this is significant, and we're going to make his video statement available in our email. So sign up for our email at gayusatv.org, and we will, and you'll get the link to that. It's a long statement, but it's significant because he's in the leadership.
Yep.
He's the chair of the Veterans Committee, I believe. Yeah.
I know he has a leadership position, and he's a thoughtful guy, and he didn't rush into this. He wasn't, someone you would accuse of being a big lefty crazy. Not that I think those words go together, yes. But he took his time, and he has now very thoughtfully, in a 13-minute statement on video, explained why he thinks we should be moving towards an impeachment inquiry.
Yeah, and again, look at the latest outrageous judicial nominee to the Court of Appeals, which is just, and this is in New York. And Connecticut and Vermont. One step down from the Supreme Court, Steve Menashe for the Second Circuit. This guy has written that societies flourish when they are not ethnically diverse. He attacked the Human Rights Campaign for spending more attention on Matthew Shepard and not on some gay child molester who, killed some kid. He criticized colleges for gay-only dormitories. He denounced Take Back the Night marches against sexual violence and defended. Here's the kicker. He defended Berlusconi, the crazy Italy prime minister, premier, whatever he was, president, for saying that Western civilization was superior to Islamic societies, something that Berlusconi apologized for, and that's a rarity. And HRC calls him unfit. But it's nice to see Ruth Bader Ginsburg surviving.
Fingers crossed.
She was at Moulin Rouge the other night.
And updates on a couple of other things. The athletes who protested Trump at the Pan Am Games, the fencer and the hammer thrower, they were threatened by the U.S. Olympic Committee for having violated their rules against any political statements. But in fact, in the end, they were given a sentence of probation and a limited sentence, and they will be eligible for the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo. So it really turns out to be just a token slap on the wrist for
and they've
them.
been warned about the Olympics, but what can they do to them when they do that? And of course, isn't standing at attention a political statement as well?
And I've always maintained that kneeling at the national anthem or anything like that is a sign of dedication to the country and to making it fulfill its promises.
How about black armbands and like mourning or something? Would that be?
I think you can go way beyond that. No, they'd get in trouble for anything, so you might as well go all the way. We told you last week that I think the vice chair of the board or a member of the board of the Log Cabin Republican Club had resigned in protest of their endorsing Trump for re-election. Well, now the executive director of the organization, a woman named Jerry Ann Henry, has resigned her job. This is not just a board member. This is the paid leader of the organization. And she got in a big fight with the board about it, too. And not entirely, but mostly it's the few women of the Log Cabin Club who are resigning. And the rest, the ones who are staying, are very enthusiastic in their Trump endorsement. And this is a real split.
Why would anybody belong to the, I'm just going to say it, and you can write to me and explain it to me, but why would anybody belong to the Republican Party at this point, given how it's led by a racist? You're behind this thing. And it's not just Trump, it's the whole Congress. I mean,
Well, we don't approve of everything the Democratic Party does either, but we're still members.
I've always said there's very little excuse for being a Democrat and none for being a Republican these days.
What a wordsmith.
There you are.
But here's a main reason to turn for these log cabinites to resign after their group endorsed Trump, and that is what the Department of Justice did last week in submitting another brief to the Supreme Court on the cases they're about to hear on whether gender identity and sexual orientation are included in the definition of sex in laws against sex discrimination.
Yeah, I mean, the Trump people said, just read the dictionary definition of sex in 1964, and it just says biological sex, which I don't think that's all it says. But, you know, look, we've been over this with the transgender case. We're obviously saying, and judges have said in many circuits, if you discriminate against someone because they're gay, you're essentially discriminating against them because of their choice of the gender of their sex partner.
Yes.
And that's all it is. And so the two cases in the gay cases are the Zarda case, which is the guy who worked for the parachute company. You know, you jump out of the plane, Altitude Express, and he won it. He won his case. He's not living with.
Yes,
he's
his
not living
estate
anymore,
won the case.
but as he won in the Second Circuit, and Gerald Bostock, who was suing the Clayton County Board of Commissioners, who was subjected to anti-gay slurs, and he was fired when his employer found out he was on a gay softball team.
Yes.
You know, so with other men.
Throw the book at him.
So he lost his case in the 11th Circuit, and that circuit said Title VII doesn't cover sexual orientation.
Well, they relied on a precedent that said that it didn't. People, of course, these courts and judges are cherry-picking their decisions based on various precedents.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this, the EEOC has said that sexual, and they covered transgender earlier, but they said sexual orientation discrimination is sex discrimination. They've been saying that since 2015, and the Seventh Circuit ruled that way. So, anti-gay discrimination is often based on the idea that gay men are effeminate and weak and lesbians are butch and aggressive, but all this has to do with sex and sex stereotypes. One of the things that was pointed out, it's still racial discrimination against a white person if you're discriminated against him or her because they go out with someone of another race in a personal relationship. They don't have to be that themselves. So anyway.
So the administration is very deliberately taking a dumbed down position on these cases and refusing to understand the modern understanding of what constitutes sex discrimination. And they're just putting forth the old arguments about the law says sex discrimination. It doesn't say sexual orientation discrimination. Right. It doesn't say gender identity discrimination.
And if Congress wanted to do it, they've got a bill they could pass, and they're not doing it.
Well, that's true.
That is true, but we're still pushing for the bill because there have been varying decisions about this by federal judges, and we want to codify it. But, and of course the bill does more than that, the Equality Act.
Yes, it does. It fixes all sorts of things for all sorts of people. It fixes some race discrimination laws. It fixes some sex discrimination laws. But we have, for a long time now, relied on the courts to intelligently understand and parse questions of discrimination because we don't want to rely on majority rule. Right. And that's why, much as we want to pass the Equality Act and realize that we need it to provide a firm base for our interpretations, but we can't rely on a Congress that is controlled in the Senate by the Republicans and the very bigoted Republicans, and a president who would veto it even if we passed it through the Senate.
Yes, and Mitch McConnell, who got all his judges through in the Supreme Court by getting rid of the filibuster, wants to preserve the filibuster so we can stop things like this.
Yeah.
Now,
shameless in his arguments. Shameless.
One more kicker. The Department of Justice actually said in this that they can't rely on sex stereotyping, but they can rely on, here's a quote, moral or religious beliefs about sexual, marital, and familial relationships. And that is where all this is going.
Yes.
And it won the praise, unanimous praise of the U.S. Catholic bishops and their meeting. They're thrilled about this, and they're thrilled about the Department of Labor saying that contractors can discriminate based on their religious beliefs, even if they're not a religious organization.
I've lost what I had about that, but I'll find it eventually.
And that's why I wanted to, bring in this whole story. Well, actually, we should mention that Taylor Swift called for the passage of the Equality Act at the Video Music Awards. There
I
she
like
is.
to watch the Video Music Awards on MTV every year because it's sort of my only intersection these days with modern music. I don't keep up with the music. I'm aware of it. I like it.
You don't play pop tunes on the radio in the car?
No, I got Sirius XM and I listen to MSNBC in the car, which is I should go to the music channels or something. But so I'm watching the Video Music Awards, and first of all, her song "You Need to Calm Down," which was the big winner, opened the show. That was they always open the show with a big, incredible production number, and this year it was Taylor Swift doing "You Need to Calm Down." And let's not forget that Taylor Swift was the object of some contempt not that many years ago in the music industry, and Kanye West getting on stage and blasting her as she was getting an award because Beyonce should have won. But Taylor
buddy.
Swift has built her cred very brick by brick over recent years and done a great job of it. And now she's getting up there and singing this song, which specifically talks about gay people needing equal rights.
Yes.
And they're flashing big signs that say Equality Act. And all the crowd on stage with her is famous drag people from RuPaul's Drag Race, other famous LGBT performers.
Well,
it is a rainbow of
her
us.
award was presented by Queen Latifah and John Travolta.
Well, that's
Do I
another
need to say
subject.
anything about
Well,
that? And Travolta tried to give it to the drag queen, the award, because the drag queen was dressed up like Taylor.
Well, whatever.
Jade Jolie.
Yeah, but the production was magnificent, and they also took shots of people in the audience who were same-sex couples, both male and female. So that was all part of the production too. It was certainly the gayest MTV VMAs I've seen.
Taylor Swift has gotten on this campaign petition, which she pushes through her song, 500,000 signatures for the Equality Act.
Yeah, but then she gets up and she says, the White House is supposed to respond if you get 100,000.
Right.
But she did it on the wrong website. You have to do that on the White House website, or that was the Obama system. She did it on...
You don't expect the White House to have respect for rule of law all of a sudden anyway.
And they're not following the Obama example. She did it on another website. But she has gotten 500,000 signatures, and I didn't check today. I'm sure it's up. But she gave, in her acceptance speech, she also talked about the Equality Act and the need for it, and urged people to sign on. And she had next to her Todrick Hall, who is now a famous gay performer, started on American Idol, now has big YouTube fame, and has appeared on Broadway in Kinky Boots, and has done a lot of other stuff. So she surrounded herself with our community. She has been pushing things. She's gotten involved in campaigns in Kentucky, where she...
She even thought of running for office, didn't she?
She may have. She's still young. She could certainly do a lot of that. But she's been much more vocal about local politicians and local... She's blasted Mitch McConnell. She supported Democratic politicians.
And the fairness campaign there.
Yes, exactly. And she has apologized for not being more active in 2016 against Trump. And she said that was a mistake, and she will be extremely active between now and the 2020 election.
I watched her Sunday morning CBS interview, and I learned a lot about her from that, and she's an enormously talented and bright person, and enormously successful. As is Lil Nas X, who can't be sorry that he came out because he won for Song of the Year for Old Town Road, the remix. He's newly out, and he thanked Almighty God. Now, he shared this with Billy Ray Charles.
Cyrus.
Billy Ray Cyrus, didn't I say that?
You said Billy Ray Charles.
Oh, well, Cyrus, of course. I have it right here. Anyway, Lil Nas X is the first LGBT musician to win in this category at the VMA.
He's very cute, and he performed on the show, but he did not perform Old Town Road, which was a shame. By the way, the White House did respond to Taylor Swift's statements, and this is what I was looking for.
Oh.
They say that they're against the Equality Act because it is filled with poison pills that threaten to undermine parental and conscience rights, which is exactly what we were just talking about.
Right. Well, conscience rights, my God, you know.
Well, that's elevating the Bible and people's supposed fealty to it and interpretation of it over the rule of law.
Yeah.
And there's one other.
I'll tell you something in the Bible. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
There's a good one. And there's another award that was given at the VMAs that I'll bet you didn't catch. Because you didn't watch, you just read. I did.
I read the
first ever fashion trailblazer at the MTV.
Billy Porter?
Marc Jacobs, who was there accepting the award.
Okay. I thought they'd pick Billy for all his nice costumes.
No.
So in terms of the way the administration is attacking us on, in court and saying we're not covered by sex discrimination, it is all about sex stereotyping. By the way, that case will be heard by the Supreme Court October 8th. We'll probably not get a ruling until June of next year. That's the way they usually do it.
And I think it's time for us to talk about David Koch and the Koch brothers.
Well, I was going to talk about sex stereotyping more,
but the person who has put all this...
the list.
I know, but we have to know who to blame for all this.
All right, let's talk. Well, okay, control room. We're going to talk about David Koch, and we have an exclusive picture of David Koch, the plutocrat, being welcomed into hell. There he is, being applauded as he enters into hell. To me, I mean, I have said he is the worst person in the world for a long time.
Yeah.
I guess before Trump came along. But this guy, he's from Kansas, from a Kansas family, big oil family. Probably half the products you buy are made by Koch Industries these days.
At least.
He was a big libertarian, and he ran for vice president once on a platform of eliminating Social Security and Medicare and all regulations, and he's been very successful. What he's been most successful in doing, wisely from his point of view, is buying up legislatures around the country, state legislatures. He's the one behind the whole 2010 thing. While Obama was president, buy the state legislatures, get them to draw the congressional lines. Why do you think we had a Republican Congress for so long?
He's the one who created ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. He has given so much money to all these right-wing organizations, and he really has bought the country.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure people understand how this size money works, but they just flood everything with advertisements, campaign literature.
Let me just say, the problem in this country, I'm not trying to, you call me a socialist, is billionaires. There shouldn't be billionaires. When you leave rich people with all this money, they have a lot of extra money. And what they spend it on is buying your government. And, if you have progressive taxation, as we used to in this country until the Ronald Reagan era, then they make plenty, they can live very well, they can eat all they want and travel all over the world, but more money at the lower levels, more money for infrastructure, etc.
David Koch founded organizations, Americans for Prosperity, ALEC, which ran campaigns to fight state legislation to fund transportation projects, mounted ad campaigns and public forums to defeat transit plans,
what you're driving,
and organized phone banks to convince citizens that public transit was a waste of taxpayers' money. Public transit.
In the 1940s or 50s, there was a group that came in and essentially destroyed the public bus system so that everybody would be in cars.
Yep.
Everything was about getting people in cars and using fossil fuels.
Yep. David Koch supported Mike Pence's campaigns for governor. He funded initiatives to undercut climate science.
I mean, they interviewed him once and he said, I don't really care about gay marriage. That's not my issue. Of course it's not his issue, but he funded all these anti-gay candidates. And in the family, there were 4 brothers, and he was closest to Charles. And they had a huge battle with their brother Frederick. You can put his picture up there. And they threatened to expose him as gay to their father. And Frederick is in his 80s now and single and said to be gay by everybody who knows him, although he denies it. I mean, I don't usually quote Bill Maher about anybody, but he said Bill Maher sent condolences poured in from the politicians that he owned.
Now, the condolences talked a lot about what a great guy David Koch was for funding a lot of cultural institutions.
Yeah, I was at the demonstration at the Met Museum when they dedicated the plaza to him, a public space. He owns the New York Ballet. What's the New York State Theater is now the David Koch Theater. I can't bring myself to use names like that.
Museum of Natural History has his name on it. The Met, as you say, and this is more pinkwashing. This is him covering up his misdeeds by giving these cultural donations and then spending 100 times as much to destroy our way of life in this country.
Of course.
Of course. Well,
no one's saying, folks,
Satan.
We're the 99%. We can vote for a different system where people are taxed fairly and public services are taken care of. There's a reasonable safety net. It's not socialism. It's humane. Yeah. All right.
So, yes.
All right. Now, can we talk about sex stereotyping?
Sure,
It was sort of the story of the week. It really caught fire. So the pop correspondent on Good Morning America, Lara Spencer, was on, and she started off, we can't show you the tape because it's theirs, that Prince George of the United Kingdom, 6 years old, was taking on a big curricula, including, and she paused, ballet lessons. She said it snidely, and then she said, George absolutely loves. She said, William said George absolutely loves ballet. And then she says, I have news for you, William. We'll see how long that lasts. And everybody in the studio was yucking it up, including George Stephanopoulos.
Sure.
You know, and it was horrible. And of course the dancers sitting at home watching this, who have gone through the bullying over this, responded. Now, who do we have next? Travis Wall, who does So You Think You Can Dance, responded to her what she called her homophobic bullying in this video.
Dear Laura Spencer of Good Morning America, yesterday you made comments while talking about Prince George wanting to take a ballet class and laughing that he loves it. And I found these comments to be very upsetting. Not only did you inspire your audience and colleagues to participate in the laughter, you have now added fuel to the fire to a massive problem in this country, which is bullying. As a dancer myself, I was bullied all the time growing up, and I'm thankful that I used that as motivation to be successful, but that's not the case for every child. I'm not sure if you know what ballet teaches you, especially if you pronounce it ballet, but ballet teaches you integrity, teaches you discipline, teaches you respect, and it teaches you bravery. And if there are any boys out there that want to dance and want to pick up a dance class, do it. Boys dance too, shut out that laughter, and you can be successful if you work really hard. So Laura, I'm just giving you this. The next time you want to laugh at a child for taking a dance class or laugh at them at all, look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself if you want to be a bully today.
She did have Travis in with Robert Fair.
Well, first she issued a very pro forma apology, written, I think, that impressed nobody.
Right.
And they continued to go after her. And so then she went on air and apologized more fulsomely.
She brought in Travis and Robert Fairchild, who was on Broadway and An American in Paris, and another dancer, a Latino guy, I can't remember his name. But I mean, she sat with them and she said, I've learned so much. But then, then she says, I didn't mean to give offense. Now, I would have said, and they accepted her apology, but I would have said, well, what did you mean?
Yeah.
Why were you doing it that way?
Yeah.
You know, and just say it was horrible. It was wrong.
Well,
and
she did eventually. She said, "I screwed up. I did. The comment I made about dance was insensitive. It was stupid, and I am deeply sorry."
Well, so then, but they didn't show what happened outside the studio.
They didn't show it on GMA?
They did not. I watched the whole apology segment and everything, and they'd show that, and people. So they mentioned it. There were 300 dancers, led by Fairchild and Travis, but boys and girls, men and women. 300 ran a dance class. It was very moving to watch it, and we actually have a few seconds of video of it that we can show as well. And we can talk over this. I mean, it was just very moving to watch it. It was such a creative. I don't know if our mics are up. It was such a creative demonstration.
And professional dancers came and took the class and said that they found it very inspiring and that it wasn't easy, and they were happy to be there.
I love creative actions like this. We have to be more creative in our actions. You know, we show up with signs a lot of the time, and we say what we're for and what we're against. But when you do things like this, it really makes people think about the whole thing. I think this was a tremendous learning experience for people, because the things these now men talked about, what they went through, and of course what girls go through when they don't gender conform, is just awful.
And these guys were not the only ones to complain. Cheetah Rivera complained, Mitzi Gaynor complained, and Debbie Allen brokered a meeting between Lara Spencer and Travis Wall.
Now, somebody reminded me that, George Stephanopoulos, who's the host of the show, when he had Ewan McGregor on, when they were talking about I Love You, Philip Morris, they put up a thing on the screen of him kissing Jim Carrey.
It was a good movie.
Ewan McGregor. And Stephanopoulos starts cracking up looking at this. And Ewan McGregor just looked at him and wouldn't let himself be gay shamed about it. And he says, I don't see what's funny about that. Why are you doing this?
Good.
So you got to take these people on and not go along with their bigotry.
And you'll be happy to know that the season finale of Dance Moms was built around the kids going to see a performance of The Prom and loving it and getting all involved with that.
Well, of course, a lot of the stuff about dance and everything brought up Ronald Reagan and Ron Jr. when he went into ballet.
Yeah.
The president, well, he wasn't president then, was just desperate about the fact that his son might be gay. And he actually had a press conference and he said, no, we checked, he's all man. That's what he said. I mean, it's of course, but he was horrified about the fact that his son might be gay.
Well, as long as we're in the dance portion of our program, Dancing with the Stars has signed up Sean Spicer for its upcoming season.
That's horrifying.
It is horrifying, and everybody's horrifying, including the host of the show, who wants him canned before he even gets on there.
ABC wants Trump voters as their viewers.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the ones who did Roseanne, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Karamo Brown, I think that's how it's pronounced, from the new Queer Eye, is also booked for the show for Dancing with the Stars. And he said, Sean Spicer is a good guy. No, he's a war criminal and a liar.
Hitler was nice to his dog.
Yeah.
Now, and Jerry Falwell has Jr. It's very interesting who he's nice to. We talked to you remember the pool boy scandal, all this money that he and his wife poured into the pool boy.
Still looking into that.
Now we're learning that he is he steered valuable university property to a 23-year-old alumni of the school, trainer, now 31, Benjamin Crosswhite. Let's put up that other picture of Benjamin when they're not having sex, and there he is. He gave him so he could get a $2 million loan. He gives him the property from the school. I mean, all of this is malfeasance on the part of a university president, and he and the wife use him as their trainer.
Just helping out an alumna.
And He flew him on his private plane down to Miami. Oh, he had to accompany me because I was having a doctor's appointment, and I needed him to explain to the doctor what I'm going through.
Jerry Falwell Jr. goes from Virginia to Miami every year for a mandated checkup that the school requires him to have for their insurance coverage of him.
Miami?
Miami.
Why in Miami?
Because it's more fun. And he meets all these guys.
Oh, and I forgot to mention that our government has let the Federal Election Commission go out of business. They don't have a quorum.
Yes.
They won't appoint anybody. Mitch McConnell doesn't even support campaign finance, so he doesn't want it funded and populated.
And then there's a little dispute in our own community about the Federal Equality Act legislation and what else we may be doing. Leaders of a number of organizations, the National LGBTQ Task Force, the ACLU, the HRC, and the Center for American Progress, and the National Center for Transgender Equality, wrote a letter to GLAAD,
the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation,
saying, we don't like your scheme to pass a constitutional amendment putting into force a sexual orientation and
said
gender.
It's a serious risk.
It's a bad idea. Get on board with us with the Equality Act and leave this constitutional amendment stuff at home.
So GLAAD is sort of backing off. They tried to say they're in an ERA coalition. We never passed the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment in the United States, covering people on the basis of sex. And they said they want an expanded, they were in a group that wants an expanded version of that that's going to cover disability and sex and race and all these other things.
That all sounds nice, but the current debate is whether getting one or two more states will pass the ERA, but I thought there was always a time limit on state legislatures passing.
There's a debate. I went to the demonstration to extend the ratification deadline.
Yeah.
But it's debate. And some states wanted to withdraw their ratifications because apparently we only need like one or two more states to pass it. But some have rescinded what counts, the first or the second, blah, blah, blah.
Well, if you're going to give them all the time in the world, I would think you would give people a chance to rescind it.
And they didn't used to have deadlines. And sometimes an amendment would be, they didn't. And they would like kick around for like 40 years, and then finally the last ratifier would say yes.
That is news to me. I always thought there were deadlines.
No, that's a more recent thing. When I say more recent, 20th century.
All right. I'm going to the states. Minnesota, the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, by a 2-to-1 vote, says that a lower court must give a Christian couple who do wedding videos the chance to defend their claim that they are allowed, because of their religious convictions, to turn away same-sex couples from their business.
Now, this is an Alliance Defending Freedom case, right-wing group, but most of their grounds were put aside. They're left with First Amendment grounds.
Yes. Free speech or religious, that is in there too. So they haven't won yet, but the Court of Appeals, 2-to-1, says they have the right to make their case to a lower court.
And in Idaho, the 9th Circuit, which is the West, said that the state of Idaho violated the 8th Amendment by denying gender confirmation surgery to an inmate. 8th Amendment is about cruel and unusual punishment.
Now, tell us about the death of Alan Fleischman, who we knew for many years as a local gay activist.
We have a picture there of Alan with Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez. He was a veteran gay and political activist.
Great guy.
And we've known him for 40 years.
Yeah.
I would say his main contribution to the movement was trying to bring Brooklyn around, because, we're trying to pass the gay rights bill. It was relatively easy to get Manhattan council members to do it, but it was tough in the boroughs. And he kind of headed up a lot of the stuff in Brooklyn. He was the president of the Lambda Independent Democrats and brought those. They needed personal relationships with people in their districts, and that's what they built. And that's what got the bill passed in 1986.
He was one of those great local activists who just does the work on a daily basis, not an activist who's out in the street getting arrested necessarily.
Although he did at the St. Patrick's Day parade.
Yes, but
Brooklyn.
Really his daily commitment was to doing the hard work of going politician by politician.
He was a Democratic district leader, so he was an insider, and he, of course, his main cause was reforming Democratic politics in Brooklyn. Not totally successful in that. I mean, it's very corrupt in Manhattan these days, too.
Well, now AOC is doing it in Queens and the Bronx.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Speaking of New York, we're going to try to, a German-American LGBT group's going to march on the Steuben Parade, Steuben Day, I should say, Baron von Steuben, I guess, on September 21st. It's a Saturday, and I'll put something in the email about that if you want to join us. It's fun. Okay. But we're not the most colorful group. You should see some of these groups in the Steuben Day Parade. He was gay himself, of course.
I was interested to note that in a sort of rural area of Tennessee, Coffee County, Lambda Legal Defense has filed a complaint against the local district attorney, Craig Northcutt. He refuses to bring domestic violence charges in cases involving same-sex couples. Yes. He thinks clerks should be allowed not to give certificates for same-sex marriage, and he won't recognize same-sex marriages. So Lambda Legal thinks he should be disbarred or thrown out of being DA, and they're pursuing this legally and officially.
Now, I have to say, I hadn't really focused on the Kentucky Farm Bureau. It's been around for like 100 years. Yeah. And it's really about agriculture, but they take a lot of stands on social issues.
They do.
And they're mostly horrible. So there was a demonstration there by, down there.
The Fairness Campaign. The Fairness Campaign is the long-standing LGBTQ rights group in Kentucky.
3 people were arrested there at the country ham breakfast.
Well, show us the second picture there. They were charged with menacing. Now, I ask you, who looks menacing in this picture? Yeah. It's not the 3 activists lying and kneeling on the floor. Well, it's the uniformed law enforcement behind them. That's who looks menacing.
Get ready for more of that, Ann, and all this talk about classifying domestic groups as terrorist groups.
Oh, yeah.
We, of course, would like the white supremacists declared terrorists, but they're going to want to declare us the terrorists. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be a federal crime to belong to one of our groups. How do you think fascism works? It's happening.
Well, it works by lying and stealing and cheating and doing whatever they want to do and just running roughshod over anything purporting to be legal or fair.
Staying in Kentucky, Kim Davis did what she wanted to do and denied licenses to same-sex couples, and a federal appeals court upheld the ruling, Kim, that you got to pay $225,000 in legal fees to 4 couples that sued her for withholding marriage licenses in 2015.
And in Downingtown, Pennsylvania, Monsignor Joseph McLoone has been charged with stealing $100,000 to finance his beach house and his dates with men.
He met these guys online. He had a great time with them. He's now being charged with felony theft. He met them on apps. His lawyer says he's anxious to get back to ministry.
All right, let's get to some of our uglier story. In Illinois, in Bolingbrook, Illinois, a black trans woman, Judy Brown, is suing Circle K, the convenience store. She says she was harassed for a year as an employee there.
There she is. We have a picture of her.
And she was fired when she complained and wanted to take off for Pride Day, which she had told them beforehand she was going to do. So that's an ugly little situation.
In California, in San Luis Obispo.
San Luis Obispo.
San Luis, they say? Good. Yeah. Trans woman, 25. She was attacked at the Super 8 motel. She was sort of surrounded by a group of men who offered her money for sex, then called her a tranny, and she said to them, someday, you're not going to want your child treated the way you're treating me. And that's kind of set them off. You're talking about my kids. Yeah. And they started beating her, and she spent 2 days in the hospital.
She had a concussion. One of the guys was charged and...
misdemeanor battery and released.
Terrible. And in L.A., a bunch of gay and trans people were attacked by a straight couple in Las Perlas bar and restaurant.
Yep.
And the place threw out everybody. But they threw out the straight couple very politely. Would you please leave? And they grabbed the gay and trans people and threw them out. They were the victims.
In New York, in Gettys, New York, two men were accosted by this is coming out of the New York State Fair. Two men were accosted by a man screaming anti-gay obscenities as they were leaving. He punched one in the face, covered himself in blood because of all the violence.
He punched out their car window.
Excuse me. They charged him with second-degree mischief, criminal mischief, and as a hate crime, second-degree aggravated harassment.
In Jacksonville, Florida, a trans student in a high school asked a teacher to use female pronouns for her. The teacher replied, "I will not." The school apologized to the young trans woman and agreed to train the teachers.
Now, stay with this story. This is in Indiana. A gay teen was beaten at Alexandria Monroe High School. He was attacked by a group of boys who videotaped it. Two students held him down while the other one punched him. He said this came after years of verbal abuse. He said, "I've gotten so used to it over the years that it doesn't faze me much." School officials and police are investigating. The kid returned to school. He says, "I just tell myself to forget what happened, and I try to act like it never happened. I'm not okay, but I will be." Well, it's such a sad, sad story. Such a sad story.
Terrible.
Come on, stop it.
In Houston, Texas, we've been telling you about the murder of trans woman Tracy Single. They have now arrested her boyfriend and charged him with the murder.
In Indianapolis, we told you, it's the fight of the Catholic schools, the Catholic school wars. One of the schools, kept a gay employee, and they were sort of barred from calling themselves Catholic, and they're being barred from any sporting event that calls itself Catholic now, although they still can fight against some of the individual schools if it's not a Catholic event.
Don't people have better things to do with their time? In Atlanta, a young lesbian activist and athlete and artist, Tia Denise Liger, was kidnapped, raped, and murdered.
Shot dead.
Yeah, there's some question about it.
Two men forced their way into the apartment, committed a lot of violence. There were three people that they pushed into the apartment. But the others survived, and there was one guy at least who was arrested, and police don't think that it was a hate crime, but we don't know.
No, we don't. And in New York City, there's an event coming to Carnegie Hall on October 24th that we might want to show up for. The Polish Gazette Community of America is sponsoring a concert. The Polish Gazette is an extremely homophobic, anti-Semitic newspaper in Poland, and they have this society in New York City. I don't know why, but they're sponsoring this concert, and so tempers are a little enraged by their ability to access Carnegie Hall.
And I've told you for the last 2 years about the Abel Cedeno case, the bullied gay teen who took out a knife and then to defend himself ended up killing one kid and slashing the other, got convicted of manslaughter and assault. So there's a campaign appealing to the judge to give him youthful offender status. He was 18 at the time. He had no criminal record. So in our email, I will tell you how to do that petition if you want to help with that.
We've been anticipating the Straight Pride Parade in Modesto, California. It was denied a park permit, but they were allowed to gather on City Square. 12 people approximately from the Straight Pride group, which actually is a white pride group, showed up, but about 200 protesters who opposed them from our side showed up to surround them and complain.
Well, speaking of straight pride, let's go to Orlando. 2 survivors of the Pulse Massacre have joined the Changed movement. Angel Colon and Luis Javier Ruiz It's an ex-gay movement, and they're planning a freedom march on September 14th to encourage others to try it, to kill off their homosexuality, right there in Orlando, right near the Pulse. And they say that they're trying to change teach the churches not to judge the LGBT community. Well, this sounds pretty genocidal to me.
It certainly does. And a tiny bit of semi-good news. The minor league baseball team, the Staten Island Yankees in New York, had an affiliation with Chick-fil-A as one of their sponsors. The gay community on Staten Island objected, and so they immediately dropped their affiliation with Chick-fil-A. And
you used to get a free sandwich when somebody hit a home run or something.
Well, now the team is going to wear these pinstripe rainbow shirts for their Pride Night.
Staten Island.
August 30th.
Which is, our equivalent of Iowa or something.
Well, I'm a lifelong Yankee hater, but I think those rainbow pinstripes are quite attractive. I think they're going to have hats like that, too.
Okay. Are we going to talk about the NASA astronaut?
Oh, God, I don't know.
All right, let's...
There's a big lesbian divorce case going on with astronauts and charges of misusing computer access from space. It's mind-blowing. The New York Times did like a full-page story on it over the weekend.
Let's do some international news. My favorite story of the week is that in a big soccer game, they call it football, in France, it was temporarily halted by the referee because there was so much anti-gay chanting coming from the stands. And the ref is getting praise from all kinds of government officials. Le foot est un sport passionnant, il doit le rester pour tout, the Minister of Sport said.
Not bad.
Yeah. And so...
the players begged the fans to stop doing the chanting so the game could go on.
Right.
On the other hand, in Turkey, the government has canceled the third edition of the Queer Olympics, PIX, I guess that's how they get away with using the word, in Istanbul.
In Thailand, the House there voted 365-101 against a motion to establish a permanent LGBT affairs committee, to the consternation of the
non-binary member of parliament, and here's why we like him,
Golf
them.
Sukapisit.
Yeah, something like that. Excuse me, them, not he.
Are those 7 million people not human? No. They said.
Yes.
I have to watch our pronouns.
Yes, well, me too.
And, we have to watch the lesbian prime minister of Serbia, Ana
I can read it when Benabic.
Benabic. She has a partner and a child, but the health minister just imposed a ban on anyone who has a history of homosexual relations in the last 5 years from donating reproductive cells for alternative insemination, in vitro or other things. Now, the community there is in an uproar over this and is trying to get that overturned.
Ever since Taiwan legalized same-sex marriage, the press in mainland China has been having a field day holding the Chinese government to account on issues like this. So they asked the parliament spokesman about what they thought about Taiwan legalizing same-sex marriage, and would China be doing that anytime soon? And the parliament spokesman said, China will keep man-woman only marriage. But here's my question, a story from Russia. Siberia. Siberia. So this bakery puts out a sign.
I have the answer to the question, but go ahead.
Saying no faggots.
Right.
And they get fined for that.
10,000 rubles. That's about $150.
Okay, but here's my question. How does the owner and people all over the world engage in the cognitive dissonance of saying the sign was not discriminatory? Was that the question you were expecting?
I was going to tell you why he got fined, because I was kind of shocked that he got fined.
Yeah.
I mean, he said he was protecting his children, that he makes natural food.
Yes.
And everything unnatural is alien to me. I think the Russian attitude is, you're not allowed to talk about this. We don't want this issue talked about or raised.
Yes, we will not kill you except in Chechnya.
Yeah.
But we will. It's similar in China. There's a vibrant LGBT community all over these countries, but they just don't want it out in the open.
We're old enough to remember when ours was the love that dare not speak its name.
Well, including right here where we are in New York. But I do not understand people who put up a sign that says no faggots and then, without a trace of irony or shame, say we don't discriminate against anybody. How do they compute that?
Yeah.
Andy is shaking
I'm not
his head.
I'm not prejudiced, they say.
Yeah. Trump maintains he is the best thing that's ever happened to the LGBT community.
I don't have a racist bone in my body.
Yeah.
But progress in Germany, we told you about this Catholic bishop before. He's sort of a retired auxiliary bishop, Dieter Geerlings. But he called for the blessing of same-sex couples, Catholic bishop, and the need for civil recognition of same-sex relationships. And this is in Munster. And he spoke at an event called the Queer Parish event. And he broadly says, we've got to change our attitude on sexual morality to embrace more things. Come on, let's grow up.
Okay.
And in India, the trans bill that was passed by the lower house was called regressive by activists.
Well, they've been calling it regressive ever since it was proposed.
Do you have any AIDS news?
I do not.
Well, let's talk about the entertainment news then.
Yes. You saw a play called Make Believe?
Yeah. This is by Bess Wall, and there's the three. The first part is a bunch of kids in the attic, 4 kids. There's 3 of them, the ones who speak. And what I loved about it is they talked like real kids. They acted like real kids. They are real kids. It's not like To Kill a Mockingbird where they're played by 35-year-olds. She let the kids do the thing, and they were terrific. But they were a bit nasty to each other. The play is sort of about the absence. They're up in the attic, and you never see the adults in the first part. I'd hate to give anything away, and the sort of the withdrawal of not being loved, and then they come back in the second part of the play without an intermission, played by themselves as adults. The adults come in, and it's I found it very moving, and they're not like sitcom kids. It was just good. It's running until September 22nd.
Okay.
And should we mention that?
Sure.
Barry Manilow has been, and Bruce Sussman, who we know, who wrote Copacabana together. They've got a musical called Harmony. It has been kicking around since 1997, and it's finally headed for New York at the Museum of Jewish Heritage in February. It's about a vaudeville singing group in the 1920s in Germany composed of Jews and Gentiles. And an Atlantic critic called it Jersey Boys for Jews, but and said, I mean that as a compliment.
Didn't our Atlanta friends see it in a tryout there a couple of years ago and liked it and alerted us to it?
That's right. We love our Atlanta friends.
Yes.
We love you all.
Yeah. Every last one of you.
So, we've been talking here for an hour, and we hope when we step outside the studio that like a nuclear weapon hasn't gone off or something. It's just been exhausting to deal with the news these days.
Call me crazy. I find it a little exhilarating to think that Trump is so losing it that we may, in fact, be able to kick him out of office.
Well, and then, of course, Mike Pence. I always assumed that he...
No, I mean in the next election. I'm not...
I always assumed he would resign so Mike Pence could pardon him of his federal crimes, but we're relying on state authorities in New York and elsewhere to bring him up on state charges that cannot be pardoned by the president.
To be continued next week. Tune in. We'll see you then.